Marcus Webb had been working at Cosmic Grounds for 3 years, and he thought he'd seen every type of customer imaginable. The downtown coffee shop attracted everyone from business executives to street performers, college students to tourists. But nothing had prepared him for the 7-foot-tall being with skin that looked like polished amethyst who walked through the door that Tuesday morning. The creature moved with fluid grace, ducking slightly to avoid hitting the doorframe. Her Marcus somehow sensed it was female features were humanoid, but elongated, with large violet eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She wore what appeared to be a formal outfit made of fabric that shifted colors in the light, somewhere between diplomatic attire and space-age fashion. "Good morning," she said in accented but clear English. "I am Kiksara, Cultural Exchange Representative from the Nexus Coalition. I would appreciate one of your coffee beverages." Marcus blinked, trying to process what he was hearing. The government had announced something about an alien integration program last month, but he hadn't expected to encounter it firsthand while making lattes. Sure," he managed. "What kind would you like?" "We have espresso, cappuccino, Americano." Kiksara approached the counter, and that's when it happened. Without warning, she reached across and gently took his hand in hers. Her skin felt warm and slightly textured, like touching smooth stone that had been sitting in sunlight. "I will trust your expertise," she said, maintaining the hand contact while speaking. "Please select what you believe would be most representative of human coffee culture." Marcus tried to pull his hand back politely, but Kiksara's grip was firm without being forceful. Other customers in line were starting to stare and whisper. Mrs. Chun, his regular customer, had her phone out and was definitely recording. I need my hand to make the coffee," Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly. Kiksara looked genuinely confused. "This creates difficulty for the beverage preparation process?" "Well, yeah. I need both hands to operate the espresso machine." Reluctantly, Kiksara released his hand, but she kept watching him intently as he worked. Marcus chose to make her a cappuccino, figuring the foam art might be impressive to someone from another world. As he steamed the milk, he noticed Kiksara studying every movement he made. When he finished the drink and slid it across the counter, Kiksara immediately reached for his hand again. This time, she held it with both of hers, completely enveloping. His fingers in her warm, crystalline grasp. "This is acceptable," she announced, though she hadn't even tasted the coffee yet. "Your preparation technique demonstrates considerable skill and cultural authenticity." The line behind her was getting longer, and Marcus could feel his manager Tony watching from the back office. "That's great," Marcus said, trying again to extract his hand. "That'll be $4.50. Kiksara produced what looked like a credit card, made of liquid metal, and somehow managed to insert it into the card reader while maintaining her grip on Marcus's hand. The transaction went through, which raised even more questions about how alien technology worked with human payment systems. "I will return tomorrow for additional cultural beverage research," Kiksara announced. "Your assistance in this diplomatic mission is greatly appreciated." She finally released his hand and took her cappuccino, but not before giving him what might have been a bow, or possibly just a nod. As she walked to a corner table, Marcus noticed she moved with perfect balance. Despite her height and the crowded cafe, the next customer, a businessman in a rumpled suit, stepped up to the counter. "Dude, what was that about? Are you dating an alien?" "I have no idea," Marcus replied honestly. Already dreading tomorrow morning as he continued taking orders, Marcus kept glancing over at Kiksara. She sat alone at her table, delicately sipping the cappuccino and making notes on a device that looked like a cross between a tablet and a piece of living coral. Every few minutes, she would catch his eye and nod approvingly, as if confirming that diplomatic relations were proceeding successfully. By the time his shift ended, Marcus realized he had no idea what he'd gotten himself into but something told him his quiet life as a barista was about to become much more complicated. Elena Rodriguez had been the head curator at the Metropolitan Natural History Museum for 8 years, but she'd never had a visitor quite like Kixara. The alien diplomat had arrived precisely at 10 a.m. for her scheduled cultural orientation tour, accompanied by a nervous-looking government liaison who handed Elena a folder marked "Classified Diplomatic Protocols" before hurrying away. "Dr. Rodriguez," Kixara said, extending one of her crystalline hands, "I am honored to experience your institution's preservation of Earth's biological heritage." Elena shook the offered hand, noting the unusual warmth and texture of Kixara's skin. What she didn't expect was for the handshake to continue well past the socially acceptable 3-second mark. Kixara held on, her violet eyes studying Elena's face with intense concentration. "Shall we begin with the dinosaur exhibit?" Elena suggested, gently trying to withdraw her hand. "An excellent starting point," Kixara agreed, but instead of releasing Elena's hand, she repositioned it so they were walking hand in hand through the museum's grand entrance hall. Elena felt her cheeks burning as visitors turned to stare. A group of schoolchildren on a field trip began giggling and pointing. Their teacher was frantically trying to quiet them while simultaneously taking pictures with her phone. Elena had dealt with unusual situations before celebrity visits. Eccentric donors, even a few marriage proposals in front of the blue whale skeleton, but walking hand in hand with a 7-foot alien was definitely a first. "This is fascinating," Kixara murmured as they approached the towering Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton. She squeezed Elena's hand gently. "Your species' dedication to preserving evidence of extinct life forms demonstrates remarkable reverence for temporal continuity." "Thank you," Elena replied, trying to focus on her professional duties despite the increasingly obvious stares from other visitors. T-Rex lived approximately 68 million years ago, and Kixara's grip tightened suddenly. "You experience anxiety," she said with what sounded like surprise. "Your emotional resonance has shifted dramatically." Elena blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The biochemical indicators transmitted through dermal contact indicate elevated stress hormones," Kixara explained matter-of-factly. "Have I somehow violated your species' social protocols?" Before Elena could answer, a middle-aged man with a camera approached them. "Excuse me, are you two part of some kind of interactive exhibit? This is incredible. Can I get a photo?" "We're not an exhibit," Elena said firmly, but Kixara seemed delighted by the attention. "I am Kixara of the Nexus Coalition," she announced, still gripping Elena's hand. "I am conducting vital research into human cultural preservation methods." The man's eyes lit up. "Oh, wow. You're one of those aliens from the news. This is amazing." He started taking pictures rapid-fire while other visitors began gathering around them. Elena tried to steer Kixara toward a less crowded section of the museum, but moving through the growing crowd of curious onlookers while attached to a 7-foot alien proved challenging. Kixara seemed oblivious to the chaos, continuing to provide commentary on each exhibit they passed. "Your species' understanding of evolutionary biology is remarkably sophisticated," she noted as they paused in front of the human evolution display. Her thumb traced gentle circles on Elena's palm. "Though I detect confusion in your emotional state. Are these specimens disturbing to you?" "No, it's not the specimens," Elena said, lowering her voice. "It's just that in human culture, we don't usually hold hands with people we've just met. It's considered ... intimate." Kixara's violet eyes widened with what appeared to be genuine shock. "Intimate? But this is merely standard diplomatic contact protocols. How else does your species exchange emotional and physiological data during formal interactions?" "We don't," Elena admitted. "We mostly just talk." "Only verbal communication?" Kixara sounded horrified. "But how do you confirm truthfulness?" How do you gauge compatibility? How do you ensure diplomatic sincerity without biochemical verification? Elena was beginning to understand that this might be a bigger cultural misunderstanding than she'd initially thought. Around them, the crowd had grown to nearly 50 people, all taking photos and videos. Security guards were starting to approach, looking concerned about the gathering crowd. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private, Elena suggested. An excellent proposal, Kasara agreed, finally releasing Elena's hand to gesture toward the administrative offices. Privacy will allow for more detailed cultural exchange protocols. As they made their way toward the staff area, Elena couldn't help but notice that her hand felt oddly cold without Kixara's warm touch. She pushed the thought away, focusing instead on how she was going to explain this situation to her supervisor. James Park had worked in customer service at Nordstrom for 2 years, and he prided himself on being able to handle any shopping emergency. But when the tall, crystalline-skinned alien walked into the men's department that Wednesday afternoon, accompanied by what appeared to be a government handler, James realized he was about to face his biggest challenge yet. "This is Kixara," the handler, a sweaty man in an ill-fitting suit, explained hurriedly. "She needs business attire for some diplomatic meetings. The State Department is covering all expenses. Just try to keep things normal, okay?" He handed James a black credit card and practically fled. Kixara approached James with a graceful stride, her violet eyes taking in the rows of suits and dress shirts. "Greetings, retail specialist," she said formally. "I require garments appropriate for human diplomatic functions." "Absolutely," James replied, falling into his professional mode. "What size are you thinking, and what's your budget?" Instead of answering, Kixara reached out and took his hand in both of hers. Her skin felt like warm marble, and James found himself momentarily distracted by the unusual sensation. "I will trust your expertise in human fashion customs," she said, maintaining the hand contact. "Please guide me to appropriate selections." James gently tried to pull his hand free. "I'd be happy to help, but I need to measure you for sizing, and I can't really do that while—" Kixara's grip tightened slightly. "This creates operational difficulties?" "Well, yeah. I need my hands to hold the measuring tape and check fit." James glanced around nervously. Other customers were starting to stare, and he could see his manager, Patricia, watching from across the department. Reluctantly, Kixara released one of his hands, but kept hold of the other. Will this configuration prove more functional? It wasn't. But James decided to work with what he had. Using his free hand, he grabbed a measuring tape and tried to estimate Kixara's measurements. Her proportions were human-like, but elongated she was clearly going to need custom tailoring for anything to fit properly. "Let's start with some blazers," James suggested, leading her toward the women's section, since nothing in men's would accommodate her height. "You might want to try a few different styles." As they walked through the store, Kixara maintained her grip on his hand, stopping occasionally to examine clothing with intense curiosity. Other shoppers were definitely taking notice now. James could hear whispers following them through the aisles. "These fabric compositions are remarkably diverse," Kixara observed, reaching out to touch a silk blouse while still holding James's hand. "The tactile properties vary significantly between materials." "Yeah, that's silk," James explained. Trying to act like walking hand in hand with an alien customer was completely normal. "It's considered pretty high quality." They reached the fitting rooms, and James realized he had a new problem. "Okay, so you'll need to try these on to see how they fit, but I can't really come into the fitting room with you." Kixara looked genuinely confused. "But how will you provide guidance on appropriate fit and styling without direct observation?" "I'll wait outside, and you can come out to show me how things look," James explained. "And we will maintain contact." During this process? No. You'll need both hands to change clothes. For the first time since she'd arrived, Kasara looked genuinely distressed. Complete disconnection during the evaluation process? This seems highly irregular for customer. Service protocols. James was starting to attract attention from other customers waiting for fitting rooms. A woman with her teenage daughter was openly staring, and the daughter was recording everything on her phone. "Look, it's just how we do things here," James said quietly. "I promise I'll be right outside the door." Kiksara reluctantly released his hand and entered the fitting room. James waited outside, fielding increasingly obvious stares and whispered questions from other customers. After about 10 minutes, Kiksara emerged wearing a navy blazer that was too short in the arms and too narrow in the shoulders. But she immediately reached for James's hand again. "The garment requires adjustment," she announced. "The fit parameters are suboptimal." "Yeah, we'll definitely need to get that tailored," James agreed, noting how the blazer pulled across her back. "Let's try a few more sizes." The trying-on process continued for over an hour, with Kisara insisting on holding James's hand between each outfit change. By now, a small crowd had gathered, with people pretending to shop while obviously watching the alien fashion show. Someone had called the local news, and James could see a camera crew setting up outside the store windows. "This is turning into a circus," Patricia hissed when she pulled James aside. "What exactly is going on here?" "I have no idea," James admitted. "She's some kind of diplomat, and apparently holding hands is normal where she comes from." Patricia looked out at the growing crowd of onlookers and news crews. "Well, figure it out fast. This is either the best publicity we've ever gotten, or a complete disaster waiting to happen." As James returned to help Kiksara with the final outfit selections, he couldn't help but wonder how a simple day of retail work had turned into an interplanetary incident. Dr. Amara Singh had been studying xenolinguistics for 15 years, but she'd never expected to spend her Thursday morning in an emergency meeting with a barista, a museum curator, and a department store clerk. The conference room at the Federal building felt cramped with all of them crowded around the table, especially with Kiksara's impressive height, requiring a specially adjusted chair. "Thank you all for coming," Dr. Singh began, opening a thick folder labeled Cultural Integration Protocols. "I understand you've all had unique interactions with Ambassador Kiksara over the past few days." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "She keeps holding my hand every time she orders coffee. My customers think we're dating." "She held my hand through an entire museum tour," Elena added. "Security had to clear crowds of people taking pictures." James nodded vigorously. "Shopping with her was like being followed by paparazzi. There are videos of us all over social media." Dr. Singh looked at Kiksara, who sat quietly with her hands folded in her lap, her violet eyes moving between each speaker with intense attention. "Ambassador, would you like to explain your perspective on these interactions?" Kiksara straightened in her chair. "I have been following standard diplomatic contact protocols as outlined in my cultural preparation materials. Physical contact allows for biochemical communication, the exchange of emotional states, truthfulness verification, and relationship assessment. I assumed humans utilized similar methods for establishing trust and compatibility." "And where exactly did you get this information?" Dr. Singh asked gently. Kiksara produced a device that looked like a tablet made of flowing water. Symbols appeared and disappeared on its surface as she manipulated it. "My diplomatic briefing materials indicated that humans value personal attention, direct contact, and individual recognition in service relationships. I adapted our traditional greeting and communication methods to accommodate these preferences." Dr. Singh pinched the bridge of her nose. "I think I see the problem. Marcus, Elena, James, what Kiksara has been doing isn't romantic or even social behavior from her species' perspective. It's purely functional. Functional how? Elena asked. Kixera's species, the Kepler 442b collective, communicates through biochemical exchanges via skin contact, Dr. Singh explained. When she holds your hand, she's reading your emotional state, stress levels, truthfulness, and general well-being. It's like a continuous lie detector test combined with a mood ring and a medical scanner. Marcus's eyes widened. So she knows. When I'm nervous or confused, she knows everything you're feeling, Dr. Singh confirmed. Heart rate, hormone levels, stress indicators, even whether you've had enough sleep or if you're getting sick. For her people, this kind of contact is essential for any meaningful interaction. James looked slightly disturbed. That's incredibly invasive. Not from her perspective, Dr. Singh said. Imagine if you could only communicate with someone by sending text messages, but you couldn't hear tone of voice, see facial expressions, or pick up on any social cues. That's what purely verbal communication feels like to Kisara. Kisara leaned forward, addressing the group directly. Your species' reliance on verbal communication without biochemical verification creates significant challenges for accurate information exchange. How do you determine if someone is trustworthy? How do you assess emotional compatibility? How do you know if someone requires assistance if they cannot express their needs clearly? We read body language, listen to tone of voice, look for facial expressions, Elena said slowly. But these methods are highly unreliable, Kixara pointed out. Humans frequently misinterpret such signals, leading to conflicts and misunderstandings. Direct biochemical communication eliminates such errors. Dr. Singh nodded. She has a point. Her species has virtually no crime, no deception, and very little social conflict, because they can literally feel each other's emotional states and intentions. Okay, but we can't just let her hold hands with every human she meets, Marcus said. People don't understand what's happening, and it's causing chaos. Which is why we need to establish new protocols, Dr. Singh said. Kixara, would you be willing to modify your communication methods to accommodate human social customs? Kixara was quiet for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. If I cannot utilize biochemical communication, how will I accurately assess the success of diplomatic interactions? How will I know if I am causing distress or if my cultural exchange efforts are effective? Maybe we can find a compromise, Elena suggested. What if we explained to people what you're doing and asked for their consent first? Or we could establish specific times and places where the hand-holding is expected, James added, like during formal meetings or diplomatic functions. Dr. Singh smiled. Those are excellent suggestions. We're not trying to suppress your natural communication methods, Ambassador. We just need to bridge the gap between our species' different social customs. Kixara's violet eyes brightened. A hybrid approach utilizing both biochemical and verbal communication protocols. This could prove highly effective for future interspecies diplomatic relations. For the first time since the meeting began, Marcus felt hopeful. Maybe they could make this work after all. 2 weeks later, Marcus was surprised to find himself looking forward to Kixara's daily visits to cosmic grounds. The coffee shop had become something of a destination for people curious about the alien integration program, but the crowds had settled into a manageable routine. More importantly, he'd started to understand what Kixara was actually doing when she held his hand. "Good morning, Marcus," Kixara said as she approached the counter at precisely 9:15 a.m., just as she had every day since their meeting with Dr. Singh. "May I have consent for biochemical assessment?" "Sure," Marcus replied, extending his hand. Over the past 2 weeks, he'd grown accustomed to the warm, textured feeling of her crystalline skin. More than that, he'd begun to appreciate the unique insight it provided. Kixara took his hand gently, her violet eyes studying his face. Your stress levels are elevated today, and I detect minor inflammation markers. Are you experiencing illness? Marcus was amazed by her accuracy. Just a slight headache and some work stress. My manager wants to implement a new ordering system, and I'm worried about learning it. Your concerns are understandable, Kisara said, maintaining the contact while he prepared her usual cappuccino with his free hand, a skill he'd developed. Over the past week, change often creates temporary instability in routine-dependent systems. However, your adaptability indicators suggest you will master the new protocols efficiently. It was like having a walking mood ring and life coach, rolled into one. Marcus had initially found Kixira's assessments invasive, but now he appreciated having someone who could read his emotional state without him having to explain or justify his feelings. Elena arrived at the coffee shop just as Marcus was finishing. Kixira's drink. The museum curator had become a regular part of their morning routine, often joining Kixara for what they'd started calling cultural exchange sessions. "How are you feeling today, Elena?" Kixara asked, offering her free hand while still maintaining contact with Marcus. Elena took the offered hand without hesitation, tired but excited. "We're opening a new exhibit on interplanetary geology next month, and I've been working late getting everything ready. I detect high levels of satisfaction hormones despite the fatigue," Kixara observed. "Your work brings you considerable fulfillment." "She's better than a therapist," Elena told Marcus, with a grin. "Yesterday she helped me realize I wasn't actually angry at my assistant. I was just hungry, and my blood sugar was low." James walked in just as they were settling at their usual corner table. The Nordstrom employee had started taking his breaks at the coffee shop, partly for the company and partly because Kisara had proven surprisingly helpful with customer service insights. "Rough morning?" Kisara asked as James approached their table. "You could say that," James replied, extending his hand for the now familiar contact. "I've got this customer who keeps returning perfectly good clothes and claiming they don't fit, but I can't figure out what she actually wants." Kisara took his hand, her expression growing thoughtful. "Your frustration levels are moderate, but I also detect problem-solving excitement. You enjoy the challenge of difficult customers." "Guilty as charged," James admitted. "So what do you think, based on your people reading superpowers? From your biochemical memories of the interactions, I would suggest the customer is not actually dissatisfied with the clothing," Kixara said. "Her behavior patterns suggest she values the personal attention and social interaction more than the merchandise itself. Perhaps she is experiencing social isolation." James's eyes widened. "You might be right. She always comes in alone and tends to chat for a long time. Maybe I should focus more on the conversation and less on the sale." Dr. Singh appeared in the doorway, checking her watch. "I hope I'm not interrupting the daily cultural exchange session." "Perfect timing," Marcus said. "We were just discussing how helpful Kixara's insights have become." Dr. Singh sat down, accepting Kixara's offered hand with practiced ease. "The State Department is very pleased with how the integration program is progressing. They're considering expanding it to other cities." "More diplomats like Kixara?" Elena asked. "Different species, actually," Dr. Singh replied. "We have applications from several other worlds interested in cultural exchange programs, though none of them communicate quite the same way Kixara does." Kixara's grip tightened slightly on Dr. Singh's hand. "You experience concern about future integration challenges?" "Some," Dr. Singh admitted. "But seeing how well this has worked out gives me hope. You've all found a way to bridge the communication gap while respecting both human and Kepler customs." Marcus looked around the table at the unlikely group that had formed over the past month. It's funny how something that seemed so weird at first turned out to be exactly what we all needed. Biochemical communication provides clarity that verbal Interaction often lacks, Kixara observed. But I have learned that human social customs have their own value. The uncertainty and mystery in your relationships creates opportunities for growth and discovery that direct emotional reading does not provide. So you're saying miscommunication has its benefits? James asked with amusement. Indeed, Kixara replied solemnly. Perfect understanding might eliminate the joy of gradually learning about another being. Your species' indirect communication methods create space for surprise, humor, and emotional development. Elena raised her coffee cup. To miscommunication and understanding, to finding common ground, Marcus added. To holding hands with aliens, James said with a grin. To diplomatic success through cultural adaptation, Kixara concluded formally, though Marcus could have sworn he saw her attempt what might have been a smile. As they sat together in the morning sunlight, streaming through the coffee shop windows, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed since that first awkward encounter. He'd gained not just an unusual friend, but a new perspective on communication, empathy, and the value of truly understanding what others were feeling. And if that understanding came with occasionally having his hand held by a 7-foot alien diplomat, well, there were certainly worse problems to have.